recovery scene, I was already excited to have Nicole Cludre on our show. But here's the thing. Any of you that follow the recovery, I was going to say the recovery scene. I don't mean me. I mean the in general recovery scene community on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. You guys know Dr. B, right? Okay. Well, you are looking at the lady that takes care of a lot of things. She listed off all this stuff, but from social media to helping patients, et cetera, et cetera. She works for Dr. B, you guys. This is so cool. Okay, so anyway, Nicole's addiction started around 17, like a lot of others. It was pot and alcohol, but I'm not going to go too much into it. I am going to give Nicole the floor, and she's going to take over. Nicole, thank you so much for being on here. I mean, it was cool enough that you were willing to come on, and then to find out that you work with Dr. B, like your street cred is so much higher. It's awesome.
I really thank you for having me on. I was excited to come on, honestly. And I feel the same way. Like, I look up to Dr. B. And so when they took me under their wing and gave me a chance to actually work with them, it was like a miracle to me. So for my recovery support, I could not have a better support network around me. Not only do I have my sponsor and my sober friends, but I also have this amazing job with people who care about whether or not I stay sober. And that's what makes it, that's the only reason why I even said, you know what, I'm going to work this job, because they actually really have my best interest at heart. And I think that's hard to find. You know what I mean?
It is. It really is. That is so amazing. I'm going to put it this way. It is a blessing. It's a blessing. It's fantastic to have something like that kind of, and I'm going to say fall into your lap, because you connected on YouTube, correct me if I'm wrong, but you started your YouTube channel to help people and change lives. And, it amazingly evolved into this fantastic opportunity.
Yeah, it was a miracle. So I feel so lucky. So I love doing it though. So you want me to start out by telling you guys about what my life was like before I started using drugs, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Beginning, middle, and end. Let us have it. And don't don't hold back. You know what? I forgot to do the whole, you guys subscribe and et cetera, et cetera. But y'all have to remember, there's always trigger warnings. Always, 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 because addiction isn't pretty. Recovery is beautiful. So if you're watching this, you have to be prepared for no holds bar, raw. This is what addiction is. But then we get to the beauty of recovery.
Okay, here I go, y'all. So like Leslie said, my name is Nicole Cludre, and I am 38 years old, you guys. I was born in Arkansas. Well, no, I was born in New York, but I moved to Arkansas, and I've lived here all my life. So it's just like I was born here. That's why I sound so country. When I was a little girl, my parents, they were married, and they've been married all my life. They haven't ever gotten a divorce. We have a really solid family foundation. I had a stable life growing up as a kid. I can remember I was probably 5 or 6 years old when I started to feel different than everyone else. Now, I have 2 little sisters. I'm the oldest, me and Nicole, my sister Michelle, and my baby sister Christine. My mom is Mexican and my dad is Italian. And like I said, I grew up in Arkansas in a kind of a little country town called Hot Springs. And growing up there, it was a sheltered life. My mom raised us up in this church called Pentecostal church. And so being a young girl, I could only wear dresses, skirts, couldn't wear pants, no shorts, no ear piercings, couldn't get my hair cut. It was a very strict religion. And so growing up, going to kindergarten, first, second, third grade, I didn't get to dress like the other kids. And so I automatically was different, and I was made fun of. I wasn't just made fun of because I wore different clothes, but I was also made fun of because I was one of the only kids that wasn't white. There was 2 Black kids and 2 Mexican kids, and that was it in our whole school. And so I would get called taco and burrito. And I remember coming home and talking to my mom about it. and crying because I felt so insecure about something that later on in life I would be proud to be brown. But when I was a little girl, I felt so ashamed because I felt different than everyone else. And I felt like, you know, I didn't fit in. That feeling of like not fitting in and feeling insecure followed me through my life. And you'll hear about it a lot in my story because it's something that I just struggled with all the time. For the most part, growing up, I had so much fun. Me and my sisters were thick as thieves, you guys. We did everything together. I played fast pitch softball. I did basketball. I marched in the marching band. I was on the dance team, like kind of like cheerleading / dance team when I was in high school. So I was well-rounded. I had a lot of stuff going on, and I was always busy, you know. As I got older, my mom decided to not be Pentecostal anymore. So we switched to this religion. It was just like a non-denominational kind of religion, like First Assembly of God kind of church. And so we started going to that church. So then I could start wearing regular clothes like everybody else. And I think it was like 5th or 6th grade when this happened. So it was like just the perfect time because now I can like, you know, fit in and be like the other girls. But then guess what happened? Now I get to dress like everybody else, but now I'm struggling with my weight. So one of the first addictions I ever had was food. Food and sugar.
I was just going to ask you, Nicole, because one of the prevailing themes, and I mean, people watching this can be like, God, she says this in every interview. One of the prevailing themes is I didn't feel like I fit in. I had friends, I was involved in stuff. It's like you could have been homecoming queen. I did not, no matter what I did. So the minute you were like, oh, I got to wear regular clothes, I was going to ask, but did you feel like you fit in?
Oh, no. And it was not so much, you know what? It wasn't even like, it was because I didn't get to wear the same clothes, but it was more of like a feeling in the inside of just like there's a puzzle piece missing. Like everybody else walking around was a whole puzzle, but I was a puzzle with like 5 pieces missing. You know what I mean?
Right. Another Matt, or was it Matt or Mark? I get so many Matts and Marks. I'm sorry, you guys. Forgive me. But Matt or Mark said it's a hole in the soul.
Yes.
Really, I'm like, yes. And like you said, it's a puzzle piece missing. Exactly.
That's how I felt. I felt like I had a hole in my soul, and I was constantly trying to find something to fill my hole with. So I didn't fit in, you know, because I felt that way. And then I started to be able to dress like everybody else. And then I started struggling with my food. So growing up as a kid, my dad is like super duper in shape. Like he's like if you could see Rocky back in the day, like young Rocky Balboa, my dad looked just like Sylvester Stallone.
Running up the stairs and
yes.
Yeah.
My dad was like stacked. Okay. All my life when I was growing up, my dad had a gym membership. He always went to the gym, super muscular, you know, very good looking man. And he was very aware of his appearance. So therefore I was very aware of my appearance. My dad always talked about his weight and how he needed to lose weight and how he felt fat. And so I always felt that I needed to work on my weight. And it was like a trickle down effect. You know what I mean? He didn't mean anything bad by it, but my dad kind of ingrained this in me to have an issue with my weight. You know, he would say things to me like, come on, Nicole, you want to get in shape. You know, when you get older, you want to be able to find a good man and get married. And to my dad, this was helping. But to me, 15, 14-year-old girl, it was not good. I was taking all that in and not processing it well. So I started starving myself. I started starving myself. I went to band camp. It was my 8th grade year, and we were transitioning into 9th grade, and it was summertime. And I was like, man, I got to get this weight off me. I want to go back to school for my freshman year, and I want to be like banging, and I want to show everybody. And so I starved myself all summer at band camp. I was eating like a Snickers bar and a Diet Coke every day, and that was it.
Oh, wow. And so it wasn't even healthy.
No.
I mean, not that starving yourself is healthy, but you know what I mean?
I was legit starving myself and eating crap. And so when I came back from band camp, I remember my parents, I lost like 45 pounds, and my mom and dad were like, you look great. Oh my gosh. And they were so proud of me. And so now I'm getting this positive reinforcement for losing all this weight. But little do they know that I was like starving myself because I was away at camp. So they had no idea. So I started my freshman year of high school. And I remember walking through the high school halls. And it was like everybody was noticing me. Everybody was like, wow, Nicole, you look so good. It was like I had arrived. It was like all the guys were starting to like hit on me and want to be my, like, ask me out. I had never experienced that before. From kindergarten to like 8th grade, I had always just kind of been like in the back. You know what I mean? Like I was kind of tomboyish and I played sports and I had a lot of friends and I was semi-popular, not like super popular, but kind of in the middle. But I was just like your friend. Like I wasn't that hot girl. But so when I came back my 9th grade year, I was banging and I was like, heck yeah. So everybody was seeing me. So I got my first boyfriend. And when I first started dating that guy, I was head over heels for him, you guys. Like he was my first kiss. And that was really all. We just kissed. We didn't do anything any farther. But I thought that we were going to be married, you know, at 9th grade. But halfway through the 9th grade year, he ended up leaving me, cheating on me with some girl. And I was devastated. I was so brokenhearted. I didn't know what I was going to do. And that was my first experience ever kind of being just like thrown out to the curb. And I remember being so upset with it, sitting with my mom, just crying and crying and crying. I had gotten so obsessed with this guy. Like my relationship with him was so unhealthy that I had taken a pencil and carved his name into my thigh. It's not there anymore, but it was there for the longest time. Like it was raised up. And so I guess I'm sharing this with you guys because like I was like already unhealthy relationship with food, unhealthy relationship with my dad and how we bounce things off of each other with our weight, unhealthy relationship with boys now. And I didn't feel like I could go to my family and like talk to them about these things like, hey, I'm struggling, you know, because when I did, my dad's Italian, my mom's Mexican, and it was almost like they didn't mean to, but it would be us yelling. Everybody would be yelling and emotions would be high. My dad would respond out of emotion. I would respond out of emotion. So instead of talking about it, I kind of just kept it, you know, kept it hidden and kept on going. So then I went into my 10th grade year of school, and this is when I started experimenting with drugs. So I had done so good all through school, and then 10th grade year, my little sister Michelle had started to struggle really, really bad. She had started running away from our house. She had started having sex and meeting up with guys and sneaking them into the home. And my parents were like really strict, like, you didn't have boys over and you weren't having sex, that was for sure. And my sister was doing all these things and more. And she started skipping school to the point where the police and the truancy officers were showing up at my parents' house. And they were tripping. And they were going to go to jail if my sister didn't go to school. And she was, I'm talking, it got so bad that my sister would wake up in the morning and we would all be getting ready for school. And she would be so violent that she would go to the kitchen, she would get a knife, and she would chase me and my sister and my mom around the house. And my dad would be at work. My dad worked all the time. He worked for the Postal Service. So he's like super busy, and he would be gone by like 4 a.m. in the morning out the door, you know? So, sorry, my dog keeps on hitting the door over there. So I'm like looking at her like, hush.
Well, it sounds like she had some emergent mental health that hit her teenage years.
Exactly. But we didn't know that. And my parents they didn't understand anything about mental health. Well, she kept doing this. She kept running away. And so the police and the truancy officers were like, if you don't get your daughter in control, we're going to have to charge you with neglect. And my parents would get in trouble. So my parents did this thing called a FINS petition, where they give the state of Arkansas jurisdiction over my sister. And so my sister, because they could not handle her, and so my sister went into juvenile jail. And it was like, you're either going to get your life together and sit here in juvenile jail, and you won't go back to your parents' house if you can't get it together. Well, in the process of being there, my sister was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And my family like slowly started to fall apart to the point where my mom and dad were really scared. They didn't know what to do. And they put my sister in a mental institution here in Little Rock, where I live now. And she stayed up here for 6 months. And while she was here, she was getting help. She was going to therapy. But our family was just, my parents were so upset. They didn't know what to do. They were worried. That was probably one of the first times I ever seen my dad like really get emotional and cry. And then me and my baby sister, Christine, we missed our sister, you know, I was worried about her.
Right. Because if anybody remembers at the beginning, you said that you and your sisters did everything together. You were thick as thieves.
We were thick as thieves.
That's painful.
When she was in the mental institution, we would go visit her like every Saturday, and it was so hard because she was just really struggling, and they had her on so many medications, you guys. They had her on so much medicine that she was like a zombie. She was not herself. And me and my mom and dad would come home and we would just be so upset. She ended up getting out at about the 6-month mark, and they had put her on so many medications that her thyroid gland had stopped working, and she gained like 90 pounds when she was in there, and she was just so depressed when she came out. And while that was happening.
Now, how old was she at this time? I don't know if you
Okay, so I was 17 or 16, so my sister was like 14 or 15 at that time.
That's just a baby. That's got to be so hard.
And that's why while that was going on, my parents were so hyper focused on helping my sister and getting her healthy that I fell between the cracks. And I started hanging out with people that were smoking pot. And I remember I had 2 girlfriends that we did everything together, and their parents were like single parents. So I could go over to their house and we would smoke pot all day long. We would skip school together. They would pick me up on the way to school, and we would smoke on the way to school and smoke on the way back. Do you care if I let my dog out real fast?
No,
go for it. 2 seconds. She is literally looking at me, scratching the floor. Okay, go. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that, guys. So, okay, oh yeah, the pot. So we were smoking all the time, and then alcohol came into play. So I had made the cheerleading team my high school year. And so I was going to all the football games, and I started dating a guy that was on the football team. And so we would go to these away games, and we would go have cake parties, you guys, and like just partying, okay? Smoking weed and drinking alcohol, smoking weed and drinking alcohol. I can remember out here in the country, what we would do is we would get these big old giant kegs, like 6 kegs, okay? And everybody would be out there, and there'd be a huge bonfire, and you would just have girls like me doing topless keg stands and just acting like the little hoochiest mamas you've ever seen in your life.
Lord have mercy.
Wild, okay, wild. What t-shirt contests, like crazy, girls gone wild, party time kind of situation. That's what it was like once I hit my 10th, 11th, and 12th grade year. Like, I was wilding out. And so I was dating that boy, and he was on the football team, and he had cocaine one night. And I had never done any hard drugs. I had smoked marijuana, I had drank alcohol, I had drank some hard alcohol, but nothing serious. And he gave me a line of cocaine. And when I did cocaine for the first time, I was like, where have you been?
Right, it's on. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because now it gives me energy. It helps me not to be hungry. And I'm noticing that, like, I'm not eating, so that means I'm going to be skinny. Like, all these things happen so quickly because I was just like, this is so awesome. Like, I love this. And so I remember, like, going to school. He would meet me in the locker room. He would give me a little bag of it, and I would be doing little key bumps throughout the day at school, like in my sophomore, junior year. Like, what the heck? Well, I had always been an A, B student, sometimes a C, and my grades started plummeting. Okay. I started getting C's. I started getting D's. I started staying out at my friends' houses all night and not coming home to my parents' house because I knew if I came home, they were going to know that I was fucked up,
Right,
and
right.
it was almost like I didn't want to disappoint my parents, but I also knew that I was I liked doing what I was doing, and I didn't want them to tell me that I couldn't do it, So I just wouldn't come home, and then I would get in more trouble. Then they would ground me, you know what I mean? Then I would be grounded for like a week, and then I would go back and do it again. And so at that time, I got into a relationship. I stopped like seeing the guy from the football team, and I got into a really long-term relationship with this guy I was with for like 6 years. And he took me around a lot of people that did a lot of drugs. And at this time we were just partying. I'm talking like my junior and senior year of high school was a blur. Like I stayed high all the time. I was out all the time. I was lying to my family. I was smoking methamphetamine now, and just like trying to keep up this lie that I'm not doing drugs to my parents, but also like everybody at school knows that I'm getting high and doing drugs, It got so bad that I went to a game, and I had gotten really drunk on Seagram 7 and 7-Up, and I went to a basketball game that I was cheering at. And I was so drunk that I fell on our coach's pregnant wife.
Oh, God.
And so my friend was like, come on, Nicole, let's go to the bathroom. And so they took me into the bathroom, and I remember sitting on the commode and just going, bam, bam, bam. Like I was like just hitting the walls because I couldn't even sit up straight, And I came out of the bathroom. They were like, well, we're going to take you home. Like, you cannot stay here. So they're taking me out of the bathroom, out of the gymnasium, because it was a basketball game. And that's when the principal came up behind me and said, dun, 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 you're not going anywhere. And they called the law on me. And that's how I got my public intox. They called the law on me, called my mom and dad, and I went to the drunk tank. And so my parents, the jig was up. They knew what was going on, and they knew I was getting messed up. Now they had proof on paper that I was getting messed up, and they had to bail me out of the drunk tank. So I remember my mom and dad came and picked me up that night, and I was sitting in the back seat of the car, and I was just trying to get out of it. I was trying to lie. I was trying to blame it on somebody else. And then I remember saying, well, Michelle's smoking crack, talking about my sister, right?
Oh, Lord.
Trying to throw everything on my sister Michelle, because my sister Michelle had started not smoking crack, but doing methamphetamine. And so I was trying to say, well, Michelle's doing meth, and so what's the big deal? I'm not really doing anything wrong. You know what I mean?
Right, right.
And then my parents were like, what did you say? And I was like, Michelle has been doing meth. And my parents were like, oh, really? And so then it was me and Michelle were in trouble, because now my parents know that we're both using, right? So they sat us down, and we had a big confrontation. And it was one of those situations where they were like, do you have a problem? And I was like, no, I could stop. I'll be fine. And at this time, I thought I would be fine. I didn't think I had an addiction. I didn't think that there was any problems. And so I was like, I'll be fine, Mom. I'll be fine. I'll stop. I'm going to get it together, and you'll see. I'm going to graduate high school. I'm going to do great, and I'm going to go to college. Well, I didn't get it together, and I didn't do fine, and I ended up barely passing high school. I think I graduated with like all D's, and my mom and dad were so disappointed in me. My grandmother flew all the way from New York to see me graduate and walk across the little stage thing, and I'm over here like barely passing,
Right.
My senior year, me and my best friend, Nikki, she ended up passing away a couple of years after that, and you'll hear about that in my story. But me and my best friend Nikki had started to smoke methamphetamine, and it had become like something that we did all the time. I graduated high school, and I enrolled in community college, and so did she. And I got a job working for JCPenney at the cosmetic department, and I was smoking meth. And going to work. And I remember a distinct transition from where I was using meth when I could get it with people I hung out with, to a point where I started to purchase my own drugs now.
Right, because addiction is progressive.
Yeah. And I had always like just gone around people and used and partied here and partied there, but now I was like seeking it out and using it to like go to my job, using it while I was at my job, using it like not even sleeping at night. And so, long story short, I was in community college. I didn't even freaking complete a semester. I like failed out, and I was like, that's not for me. I'm out of here.
Right.
So I just worked my little butt off, got a job at, like I said, at the cosmetic department. Nikki was working in catalog at JCPenney, and I was just getting high underneath my parents' nose, living in their house and working at JCPenney. Well, my addiction had started to like really affect me because I was now doing illegal, felonious things at my job. I was working at JCPenney, and I ended up having a guy come in, and I was giving him products for free methamphetamine. And I ended up losing my job. They fired me, and I got a new job at a place called Shoe Carnival. Well, while I was at Shoe Carnival, I had a whole racket going on, selling shoes out of the back end of the store. The manager was doing it with me, and we were scamming that store so bad. And this is the kind of stuff that I would do in my addiction, because I was like, it was almost like I wasn't scared. I didn't care. It was like, they're doing it too, so I'm going to do it with them. And so I was selling methamphetamine and selling shoes out of this Shoe Carnival store and pocketing the money so that way I could buy more drugs, basically.
Right.
And me and the guy that I had been with since high school ended up breaking up. I remember I was laying down in the bed with him one night, and I was like 110 pounds or something. I had gotten really, really skinny. My backbone was sticking out because I was just smoking meth all the time. And I remember him looking at me and saying, if you just lose 5 more pounds, Nicole, you would be perfect. And I was just like, is this real life? Like, wow. I can't lose any more weight. I'm smoking meth, dude. You know what I mean? Like, I'm smoking meth.
How much harder can I try?
Right. And that was like something that I always struggled with already, was my weight. And so we ended up breaking up. You know, I was not a good girlfriend. I was cheating on him and partying all the time and using drugs, and it wasn't going to work out. So we broke up, and I got a job working for the state of Arkansas at the Department of Motor Vehicles. Well, right before I got that job, I started dating this guy named LD. And me and LD were together for 6 years. And it was a toxic relationship. About 2 years into the relationship, he started beating me, bouncing my head off of the concrete, beating me. But it didn't start out like that. It started out, I met him and we were using methamphetamine together. And I remember seeing him and thinking he was so cute. And I gave him my phone number, and he called me, and he was homeless. He was sleeping on his grandmother's couch. And here I am. I have a brand new car. I worked my ass off to get it, you know, and put the down payment on it. I had a job working for the state of Arkansas. And I was like, I'm going to save him. I'm going to help him get off of probation. I'm going to help him pay his fines and fees. And I'm going to make him better. I'm going to fix him. And this was my first, like, I'm going to save somebody, fix somebody relationship, because I did not love myself. I was still very insecure. I was using drugs to manage my life and my weight. And now I have this guy that I can fix him. And then, you know, like, everybody will be like, damn, she's got her shit together, you know?
Mm-hmm. Save your
In
complex.
the process of doing that, I fell in love with him. Like, I really loved him with all my heart. And I really genuinely did want to help him. And so I did. I helped him get off his probation. I helped him pay all his fines and fees. And we ended up moving into this little 1-bedroom efficiency. And it was so nasty that the roaches had roaches. It was so nasty that we could be doing the deed and there would be a little roach sitting on his shoulder looking at me. It was like so crazy, you guys. Wow. Like, bad. It was the kind of place that it came furnished, and it had a mattress on the ground with like blood stains on it from a prostitute that had lived there the week before. Like, disgusting. Okay. I had never lived in a situation like this, but I was willing to do it because I was staying high 24/7, 7 days a week. I remember my parents, we had lived there for 6 months. I was working for the state of Arkansas, doing really good at my job. My parents were like, we want to come over. We want to see where you're staying at. And my dad came over and he was like, I cannot believe this. I cannot believe that you're living in this. You're not living here anymore. We're going to help you find a place to live. And so my parents helped me find a little trailer to live in out in the country by them. And it was something that I could afford. Now, I was paying all the rent. I was paying my car payment. I bought him a car and was paying his car payment. Like I was just doing everything. And my dad was like, why are you with this guy? Like, he is just using you. But I could not see that. Like, I really thought that he loved me. I thought that he cared about me. Well, about a year into our relationship, he started to just change and be like really mean and really just demeaning, saying hateful, mean things to me, calling me a fat ass, calling me a bitch all the time, throwing things at me. And I'll never forget the first time that he really hurt me. He threw a sippy cup, about that big, full of milk. It was one of his sister's son's sippy cup, and he split my head open, and blood just went everywhere.
Oh, wow.
And instead of like being like, oh my gosh, are you okay? Let me put something on that. I remember him being like, bitch, that's what you get. You know what I'm saying?
Oh.
And I went in my bedroom and I laid down and I was crying and I put a towel over it and I fell asleep. And when I woke up, that towel was covered in blood. And I was like, I got to go to the emergency room. And so this was my first experience going to the emergency room and lying and saying, oh, I fell and bumped my head. And I remember coming home after they stitched my little head up. And at the time, his dad had came from California and he had nowhere to go. So he was living with us, and his sister had nowhere to go. So she was living with us and her kids were living with us. And I was just footing the bill for all these people. And this was like a long relationship. I was with him for 6 years. And this was something that happened all the time. His family had nowhere to go. They would come stay with us, and they would be with us for a whole year. Then they would move out. Then they would come back. It was like back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Just toxic, unhealthy, and they were just sucking the life out of me. But I was staying high. So it didn't matter. I was staying high. I was, working. So I couldn't see that I was being used and taken advantage of because I was getting so fucked up all the time. And I thought that he loved me. And he started to put his hands on me to the point where he was slapping me and punching me. And I was still going back and still going back. And my best friend, Nikki, I remember I said, I can't do this anymore. I'm leaving. And I packed up my stuff and I went to her house, and her and her husband let me move in with them. And they made me my own bedroom and cleaned it out and made it all pretty. And, they helped me so much. And I really thought that I was going to stay and I was going to leave him forever, but I didn't. I ended up going back to him. And I'll always regret that, because after I left Nikki's house and I didn't go back to live with her, her and her husband ended up getting into an argument, and he left for work. And that day she committed suicide and killed herself.
No.
And she shot herself in the chest. And I remember thinking, if I had been there, maybe it would have been different. I have such a struggle with people and suicide because I've had 2 friends that have taken their own lives, and it was like right when it was just such a hard time for me. And so after she committed suicide, I was just devastated. LD left me one day and he never came back. He stole all of my jewelry. He stole everything that I had of value and left me high and dry. Just left me and never came back.
After
I remember
6 years.
You what?
After 6 years of you putting up with all that crap.
Oh, he left me. He stole I had all these diamond rings because I had really good credit and I worked all the time. I was high and I worked all the time and I had credit. And so I had all these nice rings, all this nice jewelry, just nice stuff. And he robbed me. And then he left me to go be with this other girl. And I finally found him when I called his sister and I was like, where is your brother? Like, what's going on? And that's when she told me that he was with her best friend. And so I remember being so upset. I was crying. I was devastated, man. I was begging him to come back, begging this dude who bounced my head off the concrete to come back. You know what I mean? Like, I was so sick. I was so damaged that I thought that I deserved that, you know? And after he left, then I went and I started shooting up meth. And that's when I started injecting drugs. I started shooting up, and once I started shooting up, everything went downhill really fast. I lost my job working for the state of Arkansas because I was doing really, really, really bad things under the table, and I could have went to federal prison for it, and I lost my job there. And I'm very, very grateful that I didn't go to federal prison. My boss was friends with my dad, and instead of turning me into the cops, she told me to get my shit and resign. And so I did, and I never went back. And when I lost my job there, like I said, I started injecting meth, and I moved in with a guy that was cooking methamphetamine. I was shooting it up every day. I was losing my mind. I was really, really, really bad off. I was hallucinating because I would stay up for days and days and days on end. And I remember I had gotten so bad, I had drove home after doing like acid and pills and meth, and my mom was there, and she called 911, and I went to the hospital. And that's when she asked me, like, do you want to get help? And I was like, yeah. And so I went to treatment for the first time. I think it was like 24, 25 when I went to treatment for my first time. And I went to rehab, and I did great. I went in there, I learned things, I got a sponsor, I listened to everything they said, and I came out of treatment, and I stayed sober for 6 months, and I relapsed. And I was right back at it again, shooting up. And now I started taking opiates and benzos. And so not only am I doing stimulants, but now I'm adding benzos and opiates to the mix. And I'm just kind of like doing all these drugs all the time. I have nowhere that I'm really staying because my parents won't let me live with them. So I'm staying at the dope cook's house. I'm staying at my friend's house. And I was at the dope cook's house one night, and we had picked up a pack of drugs, and we were taking it to deliver it to somebody. And we delivered it to these girls, and they were confidential informants, and they set us up. And that's when I got my charge for possession of a controlled substance, methamphetamine. And that was in 2008 when I got that charge, and they put me on state probation for 3 years. Well, honey, I don't even know why I agreed to take state probation, because my ass wasn't ready to get sober. I couldn't even pass one drug test. That's how I just couldn't. I couldn't. I was trying to find the magic combination. Like, how can I stay high without them knowing and pass drug screens? So like trying to just drink alcohol, or I'll just do pills, or I'll just do cocaine. Like, I was just trying to find this magic combo.
Right. Like how many days beforehand do I have to stop, and how much water do I have to drink?
Yeah, and it was not working. So my probation officer, after like 5 or 6 failed drug screens, she was like, I'm going to give you one more chance. And she sent me to a treatment center. And so I went to treatment in this place called South Arkansas Substance Abuse in El Dorado, Arkansas. And I will never forget it because I had the worst withdrawal ever. I was coming off of methadone wafers, and I was on those and benzos and methamphetamine, but I was coming off of opiates so bad that it was coming out at every end. And I remember my little roommate, she was like, are you okay? And I was like, girl, it was so bad that I couldn't even hold anything in. It was just horrible. I'll never forget that withdrawal. But I went through the program. I did really well. I came back, I graduated, I came home, and I relapsed, not even 30 days after. So now I relapsed, and so I'm in trouble with my probation officer. And she's like, you're going to prison. And I was like, what? Like, you're not going to send me to prison. And I've never really been to jail except for that time I got a public intox, And so I was like, really? And she's like, yeah. And so she revoked put a warrant out for me, and then I had to go to court, and they took me to prison. And I went to county jail. I remember they put the shackles on me. I ate these Xanax bars, and I went in there, and I slept for like 3 days when I first got to jail. And then I woke up, and I was like, I am going to prison. Like, this is for real. Like, I can't get out of here. And it was just like, everything in my life was just like slamming into me, like, whoa, like, I can't get out of this. Like, I can't talk my way out of this. I can't call my parents. I can't do anything. And I went to prison for a year at a regional protection facility in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, Arkansas Department of Corrections. And it was a military style boot camp prison. And so I did my year there, and I listened to everything they told me to do. I was well behaved, and I came out and I was like, okay, I don't want to go back to prison. I don't want to be revoked on my parole. I'm going to set myself up for success. And I was like, I'm not going back to Hot Springs. So I paroled out here to Little Rock to a sober living house. And I moved into the sober living. I had a sponsor. I was working steps. I was going to meetings. I was chairing meetings. I was doing everything they told me to do. I got a really good job. I was a deli manager at Kroger. I was really, really doing well. And I think I had like 9 months sober, and I relapsed and I started shooting Oxys. And wow. I had never shot Oxys. I was just shooting methamphetamine and cocaine before, and orally taking opiates, snorting them or, eating them. And so now I started banging Oxys, and that was like a whole different situation, because I could like stop doing meth and go to sleep, but now like I have to have these things every single day to get out of my bed. Like if I didn't have a Roxy, like I was freaking miserable, and I did not want to be alive. I didn't want to get out of the bed. So I found, I moved out of the halfway house, and I moved in with a girl named Tara, who we had become just best friends. And so I was working my job for Kroger still, shooting Roxys, smoking crack all night long with her. Just bad, y'all, bad. And just, that was my life. That was my life. I was banging Roxys, working and doing drugs all the time. It was just lame, dude. It was pathetic, really. It was pathetic.
Same thing, day in, day out.
Yeah, that's all we did. We lived to get high, got high to live. And she had a little daughter, and her daughter was like 5 years old. And when I look back on it, I feel like such a piece of shit, because like that poor little girl, she just wanted attention. She just wanted her mama to pay attention to her. And she just loved me to death. And I was too busy like smoking dope. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, okay. So that's about a good chunk of time though. Like I lived with her for like from 2010-ish to 2012 and a half-ish. So I was with her for about 2 years, living in her house and just sleeping on her couch. And then in 2012, I met my husband. And I was I had just moved out of her house, and I had moved in with my friends, Hunter and Kaylee, and I was sleeping on their couch, and we had a party. And the deal was, let me tell you this, I had gotten my car impounded because I had no car tags on my car and no insurance. And I was pulling out of the car wash, and I had just got done banging some Roxys, and I had this guy with me, and I got pulled over, and he got taken to jail, and they impounded my car and left me out there on the street. So I was like, I can't get my car. I don't have no money. My parents aren't going to get it. So I sold it to a lady for $3,000. She got it out for like $500 and then gave me $2,500. And I took that money and went on a bender and got high, and then moved in with them. Well, I met my husband, and I remember when the first day I saw him, he has red hair, and I was just like, oh my gosh, he's so cute, but we were like attracted to each other from the very start. And I didn't know that he struggled with addiction too, until about like 4 or 5 days into talking to him. And then we both realized that we were both opiate addicts, methamphetamine, just addicts in general. And so he was on methadone at the time, but not because he was trying to be sober. He was taking like copious amounts of methadone. And so that means I started to do the same. And we stayed together, we got together in 2012. And by 2013, we had found out that we were pregnant. And when I found out that I was pregnant, I was on meth, I was on methadone, I was on benzos, I was on I was just on a lot of drugs. I was on every drug you could be on, but I was heavy on meth and the methadone. I found out when I was pregnant, and I remember looking at Neil, and I was like, I don't know what to do, because I don't know. I can't stay sober. You know, I had tried many, many times, and I always failed. And so I was like, I'm going to try and do this. And I tried, but I failed miserably. And I used through my whole pregnancy. And I gave birth to my son on July 4th, 2014, while I was high on methamphetamine. And when he was born, it was the most amazing situation, because when my son was born, he was born completely perfect. He was born completely sober with no drugs in his system.
Wow.
I was so high when I gave birth to my son that I was 100% positive that they were going to take my son from me that moment. I was 8.5 centimeters dilated when I went into the hospital. That morning I had woke up at 5 a.m. and I had this really bad pain. No, I didn't wake up. I had been up. I was up on meth, and I was sitting down in the room, and I started getting this really bad pain in my lower back. And so I went and called my mother-in-law and said, hey, like, I think I'm going into labor. And I called Neil, and he knew that I had been up all night because he had been up too, but he was at work at the time. And so we both were like, oh my God, like, I was like, they're going to, and I just knew they were going to take Nathaniel from me. I went into labor, and I was so high on meth that I was like geeked out, you know, like I was like my mouth was doing this weird thing. Like, you could just look at me and know that I was high. I don't know what happened that day, but it was July 4th night. And I don't know if they just like, I slipped through the cracks, or they were so busy that they didn't notice, but I made it out of there. Like, I took my son home, and I was like, see ya. I gave birth to him. He came out perfect. I was so grateful. I used to get really, really emotional when I tell the story. I would cry so much, but because I was so ashamed, and I still have a lot, I still feel shame, but it's not like sick shame. Like, now I've forgiven myself, but I still wish that I could have done differently. You know, I wish that I hadn't been like that. So Nate was perfect. Nothing wrong with him. No drugs in his system. And 2 days later, after I gave birth to him, we went home. And I remember I was like, I am getting sober. This is it. I'm changing my life. My mom had flown down from New York to teach me how to breastfeed and all those things, right? And so I was like on the wagon. I was like, I'm going to do this. And I stayed sober for 90 days. 90 days, white knuckling it. Well, after those 90 days, I remember it was like a little demon came to talk to me saying, you should take a Xanax. It'll make you feel better. You can relax. And I went and got a Xanax, and I was off to the races, back on the needle, back shooting methamphetamine. And so was my husband. We were both out there. And so we were leaving my son with my mother-in-law and my father-in-law, and they were watching Nathaniel, and we were running the streets, just doing BS. Tara, my friend that I had lived with for a little while, me and her had gotten into an argument one night, and she said, I'm going to call CPS on you. And I was like, no, you're not. She's like, yeah, I am. Well, she wasn't lying. And she called CPS on me. She called CPS on me, and they came 3 times, left a note on the 3rd time, and I got the note, and I read it, and my heart dropped down into my stomach. My son, his birthday was in 2 days. He was going to be 1 year old. I went to the CPS office, and 2 days before his first birthday, they came over here, drug tested me and my husband, and said, we're not going to take your son. We're going to put in an order of protection, but you need to get help. Came back the next day and said, never mind, we changed our mind. We're removing your son from your home.
Oh, wow.
So I was freaking out. They said, you got to pack his stuff up, and you need to bring him to the office. And I was just like, it was just like, how do you pack up your baby who is about to turn 1 year old 2 days before his first birthday and give him over to somebody you've never seen in your life, like a complete stranger, you know? And I love my son. Like, I might have been messing up, and I might have been using drugs, but I love my son very, very much. And I knew that what I was doing was wrong. I knew it, but I could not stop. I wish that I could have stopped. I wish that I had the courage to ask for help. Like, I think back to that, and I think if I had just asked for help, I would have been able to get help. And then maybe it would have not been like that. But I was so, I could not ask for help. I was so afraid they were going to take Nathaniel, and my worst fear ended up happening, you know? So I took my son, I packed his bag, and I took him and I gave him to this lady, and I said, please just take me to detox. Just take me to detox because I cannot do this anymore. And she took me to detox and dropped me off. And I said, please let me stay here. I'll pay whatever it costs, you know. And I had, by the grace of God, I had gotten Obamacare. And my treatment was paid for, and I was just like, I had never had insurance the whole time until I got that Obamacare for my pregnancy, you know? Mm-hmm. And so I stayed in detox for 5 days. And on the 6th day, or on the 5th day, it was a Sunday. That was a Saturday. And they were like, no, it was Sunday. And they were like, you can go home now. And I was like, no, I have to go from here into rehab. Like, you can't let me leave here on a Sunday. If I leave here, I'm going to go get high. You know what I mean? And so they were like, okay, we'll let you stay one more night. And so they let me stay in the detox one more night. My father-in-law picked me up on Monday and drove me to the treatment center that was connected to this place. That was like, they worked together. And so I went into rehab for 30 days. Now, my son is in foster care now. He's in between homes. They have him in a respite home, then they have him with a foster parent. It's a shit show, and I'm worried sick. But at the same time, they have my husband, who is in active addiction, picking me up from treatment to go to court for CPS. So what happens? My husband has Xanaxes, so I take a Xanax. And so I think I'm so slick. I think I'm so slick in treatment for the first 2 weeks, popping Xanaxes like nobody knows. Well, they knew, but they waited until they could catch me in the act, catch me with like trying to get the pills, trying to trade them, right? Get them from my husband. He would like bring them and drop them off, hide them somewhere. And they caught us. And I remember when they caught us and they were like, we're telling your caseworker, and whatever she decides, what she wants to do, then that's what we're going to do. And so it was all up to my caseworker whether or not they were going to kick me out and whether or not she was going to revoke, what is it called? Terminate my rights and take my son away forever. Well, I don't know what happened, but something happened, and I remember praying all night that night, and they decided they were going to give me a second chance. And so for the next 2 weeks, I did everything they asked me to do. I mean, if they had asked me to stand on my head outside, I would have done it. You know, I was just so thankful that they gave me a chance.
Right.
And so after those 2 weeks, I graduated the program, and I hadn't been able to talk to my husband for 2 weeks because they were like, you guys are too codependent on each other, and we don't want another incident with him to be bringing you drugs. So no communication.
Well, let me ask a question real quick for people that don't understand. Why were they so focused on you? Because your husband's in the house too, you know, he's the dad, and yet it seems like everything's falling on mom. Okay, so me and Neil were not married. I say husband because he's my husband now. Mm-hmm. We weren't married, but he's my son's father. Honestly, I don't know, but it was all about, I had to go to treatment. It was all on me. And I still talk to my husband about this to this day. Like, I don't understand why he didn't have to go to treatment. I don't understand why everything was my responsibility. Like, seriously. I wonder if it would have been different had you been married. I think, I don't know, but that's what I thought too, because he ended up going to like an outpatient treatment for the first 2 weeks that I was in treatment. No, the second 2 weeks that we couldn't talk to each other. But that was because like, I was like, listen, shit's going down. Like, we're going to lose our son. You know what I mean? If we don't both get it together. And so he went to outpatient while I was finishing up the last 2 weeks of my treatment. And when I got out of treatment, he picked me up
And I remember it was like a Friday or something, and I wanted to get high so bad. And that's the thing, you guys, like, I wanted to get my son, but I also was just like, I had never stayed sober, like really stayed sober and been happy being sober, like I just didn't even know where to begin. And so my husband picks me up and he goes, I got put on MAT. And I was like 2 weeks sober from benzos and 30 days sober from everything else. And I was like, what do you mean you got put on suboxone, right? And he's like, I got put on suboxone.
Now explain to everybody what MAT is.
Okay, medication assisted treatment. Mm-hmm. And the route that my husband had chose was the suboxone route. And so suboxone is a medication that is buprenorphine and naloxone. 8 milligrams of buprenorphine and 2 milligrams of naloxone. And what it does is buprenorphine has a higher affinity to the opiate receptor. And so it attaches and plugs itself into that receptor, and it helps you to not have cravings. And if I wanted to go out and like use heroin or use Roxys, like that was my drug of choice, Roxys, then what would happen is that Roxy would come in, and because suboxone has that receptor occupied, Roxy wouldn't be able to get on there because buprenorphine is on there. And so I would get no effect from the Roxy.
Right. And this is something that, although I have never been on Suboxone, but that's because I had no need for it with my addiction. But this is something that Nicole and I are very passionate about, because a lot of people will come at a recovering addict and tell them that they're not really clean, they're not really recovering, they need to come off of it, they're still on drugs. And what we need to make clear to I wish a lot of people that come at mothers that are addicts could see your story, and hopefully they will. Because and I'm not talking about, there are people in this world that should not be parents. We can both agree to this. Okay?
Yeah, for sure.
But any real mother, the mother that has her child, and when you look at your child as a mother, to this day, I cannot explain the type of love. It's not the type of love I have for my husband. It's not the type of love I have for my mother. It's a completely transcendent, amazing kind of love. And there is no actual mother on this planet that is actually choosing drugs. Drugs are controlling her. I get a lot of kids of addicts and alcoholics. Why wasn't I enough? Why didn't they love me? You were enough. They did love you. It had nothing to do with any shortcoming of yours. It was they were in the grip of this addiction and they wanted out. Odds are, I'll say, because maybe not, but odds are they wanted out. Now, that being said, move on to you being on Suboxone. People take medication for disorders all the time. Suboxone is a medication that helps people with, we'll call it addiction disorder.
Right. Yeah.
So
opiate
I'm
use
done
disorder.
with my soapbox. I'm going to let you take back over.
Oh.
Yeah. It's something Nicole and I like. We have to answer back to people on this all the time.
And here's the thing, like, I want everybody to understand something. Okay. I have been indoctrinated, like it had been drilled into my head that abstinence was the only way to recover.
Right.
12-step abstinence-based recovery was the only recovery I was ever given an opportunity to even know about. I didn't know there was any other kind of recovery. I didn't know that there was smart recovery, refuge recovery, none of these things, because here in the South where I live, every treatment center is 12-step AA treatment that they're teaching you in the rehab. And then those are the only meetings that they have here are 12-step meetings, right?
That was Michigan too.
And so that's all I ever learned. So when I went to get help, I was again trying to plug myself into this program that I had been doing for years. I didn't even tell you guys all the treatment centers I had been to, because I was like, oh my gosh, I've been on here for an hour. I want to tell this whole story. But I had been to 6 rehabs, and all of them were the same. And I had been in and out of sober living houses, and all of them were the same. I had had many sponsors, worked the steps many times, been chairing the meetings, going to all kinds of like meetings all over the United States, like where they have conventions and stuff. And I was like still trying to do it this way that I had never been successful at before.
Right.
And so when my husband came and picked me up and said I got on suboxone, I was pissed. I was like, oh, hell no. You're still trying to get high. You must not really want to be sober. You're just trading addictions. Don't you know that? And then I remember my husband, he was like, okay, Nicole. And so we went home, and a couple of days went by, and he was like, doing great, not struggling with cravings, not struggling with thoughts of using really a whole bunch. And we were, like I said, in and out of court. A lot of stress was going on. And that's when I was like, I need to talk to the doctor. We need to meet with a doctor, and I need to meet with my therapist, and I want to talk to my parents. And so we all met together. And that's when my doctor sat me down and he said, okay, Nicole, just like I told you guys, I want you to share with me how every time that you've tried to get sober has worked out for you. And I told him, like, okay, this time I relapsed, this time I did this and relapsed. And so every time that I talked about was about 6 months. And then I would get a job, I would start doing well, I would, start getting focused on other things, and I would pick up and use.
Self-sabotage. So, right.
That's when he said, well, this medication was literally created for people like you. Like, you can get on this medication. It will help you manage your cravings. It will help you, it will just help you manage cravings, and it'll also block the effects of opiates. And I was like, because I wasn't struggling with my methamphetamine. Like, the one drug that I would think about all the time was I wanted to go shoot Roxys, and I wanted to eat Xanax bars. I don't know what it was. Now, later on, I would start struggling with like cravings for methamphetamine, but at the very beginning, it's all I thought about was opiates for some reason. And so I had 30 days off of all that, and I started on MAT, suboxone. And now that I have been on it, it saved my life. It was the best decision I ever freaking made in my whole entire life. I've been sober for almost 6 years, 5.5 years. And I started out on 12 milligrams of suboxone. And right now, today, I'm on 1 milligram of suboxone.
Fantastic.
And I feel amazing. I feel great. I have my life back. But let me explain something to you guys. When I got on suboxone, I felt the same way that all of you probably felt, because that's what I was taught. I was only taught one way. Let me explain it to you like this. You know, when you were a kid and you went to church with your parents and you were Southern Baptist, right? And the only church you had ever been to was your good old Southern Baptist church. Well, then when you turn 20 years old or whatever, when your friends invite you out to the real church, a black folks church, where they're like clapping and doing back handsprings and screaming and yelling and singing. And you're like, whoa, this isn't right. They're not supposed to scream and yell. They're not supposed to do backflips up in church. Well, worshiping your higher power or God, there's no right or wrong way to do that, right? Just like there's no right or wrong way to recover. Everyone's recovery is different.
Amen. And so, preach it, sister.
I had always been taught that the only way to recover was through 12-step abstinence-based recovery. Yes. And so I struggled.
The courts tend to remand, as part of probation, etc., that's what you have to do. You have to go to a meeting. You have to go to 12 steps.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with 12 steps either. Like I said, they've helped hundreds of thousands. That's great. That doesn't mean it's for everybody.
Right. And so that's the problem I had also. I was like, it was so, I didn't understand it, so it couldn't be right. And that's what it was. I didn't have any education about it. But once I got on the medication, you guys, I made it my life's work to educate myself about suboxone and to learn everything I could about it. I also made it my goal to learn everything I could about addiction. And so that way, anybody that stepped to me about it, I would know. I could school you from here to Timbuktu about being on MAT, and nobody can step to me when it comes to this at all. Nobody. I have literally gotten, nobody can step to me about it. Like I'm really that, I know what I'm talking about. Nobody can step to me. But I learned everything I could about it on purpose. So that way, because I was involved in AA, and I did go to meetings, and I was on this medication, and I wanted to be able to be honest with people about that. And I was honest about it. And I got some shit from some people, but for the most part, my sponsor was amazing. She took me through the steps. She didn't judge me. And I will never forget her, because she really showed me what the program is supposed to be like. You're supposed to be there to support your brothers and sisters in recovery, and you're supposed to meet them in the middle wherever they're at and help them, you know. And it's not about what medications you're on. Honestly, you guys, like, it doesn't matter what medications you're on. If you're taking your medication as prescribed, that's null and void. It doesn't matter. I'm also on Lexapro and Wellbutrin for my mental health, and nobody gives me shit about that.
Right.
Nobody cares about that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so I learned really quickly that people have opinions, but opinions are not facts, and opinions have no business in recovery. Like, your opinion doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Right. Like, this is my life. So I got on the medication, and I started, hit the ground running, dude. I started working my ass off to get my son back. I put myself through parenting classes. I went and got a full-time job. My husband had a full-time job. We just got a brand new car so we could go out and see my little boy, because they had him in a foster living house that was like 30 minutes away from our town. So we had to drive over to the next town. And I was working my steps, doing my meetings, chairing my meetings, just like got super involved and learning everything I could about like suboxone and addiction. And we were going in and out, back and forth court dates. And it was hard, you guys, because the attorney ad litem did not want me and my husband to have my son back.
I hate that so much. I am a sign language interpreter. I've interpreted court, and I've experienced this, and that is so wrong.
It was so difficult, because they told us that the goal was reunification, and me and my husband were on MAT, stable on a dose, never failed a drug test, stayed sober the whole time, made all of our meetings, made all of our court dates, got our hair follicle tests done, took our parenting classes. We were a model case. In fact, I had to call my caseworker and remind her to come do the house visit once a month to make sure she gave me my drug test randomly, because they would get so busy and they had so many cases that she would forget. And then I was like, no, I have to have this to get my son back.
Wow.
That's how well me and my husband were doing. We were no problem to them at all. Well, in the court, this woman, she had it out for me and my husband. My sister-in-law, who my husband's sister, they do not get along. She wanted to have custody of my son. And I told her, no, I would rather him go to a foster care home than to be with you. Because if she had gotten custody of my son, she would have never given him back. She would have, because she went to that attorney ad litem before we got like a month into our case. And she was telling the attorney like about my husband, how he struggled with addiction his whole life. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to let you take my son and then you keep him from us. And right. So we put Nathaniel into foster care, and we fought. And every time we went to court, it was something new. Well, they need to have a hair follicle. Okay, we'll do that. Okay, now we need to have psychological evaluations. Okay, we did that. Oh, those psychological evaluations weren't good enough. We need another one from this doctor. They were trying to prove that I wasn't mentally fit to take care of my son. And I was like, I was an addict for 13 years. Maybe those behaviors from when I was an addict exhibited me not being fit, but I was on drugs. Now I'm sober. I had no like bad mental illnesses. I have generalized anxiety disorder and depression. Like, you know, I didn't have anything going on. Like I would, even if I did, you know, that doesn't matter, but I wasn't like, hey, I didn't have an illness that was going to keep me from being able to care for my child, you know? Neither did my husband, and we both were gainfully employed. And I remember we went to our court date. Our last court date, we had started to get, Nate was coming over and he was staying the night with us on the weekends. And we went to our last court date, and I brought my doctor, the nurse, my counselor, everybody to get on the stand and to vouch for us, because my last court date, the attorney had lied and was like, well, they're not really sober because they're on suboxone. So she wanted to drag out that. Yep. She wanted to drag out our case for another 6 months to a year, because she said we need to get off the medication before we could get our son back. And I brought everybody. I brought like I said, doctors, everybody. And we fought that shit, and we won, and we took our son home with us that day.
All these children out there who have parents that actually need to be going to court and to be mandated treatment, et cetera, because mom and dad won't get clean. And yet this guardian ad litem has just all guns locked on you for some reason.
Yeah. And that's what I could not understand. And that's what I asked the court. I said, I just seen a girl that was in one of the parenting classes with me. She's failing her drug test every week for marijuana and crack cocaine. And she still has her child in the home. You guys are like, what is going on here? I seen another little kid who his parents, I don't know what they did to him, but they must have beat him bad enough to where he had like this big ass, like a bump on his head that was really big. And I was like, these children are being beaten and left in their home. These children are being starved and left in their homes. And it was the strangest thing I've ever experienced, but we won. And I was like, I will never, ever come back to this place ever again. Well, 2 years after our case had closed, CPS calls me and they're like, hey, Nicole, we would love for you to come work and be a parent partner for us. And I was like, what is that? She was like, we want you to come and mentor the women who have their children taken away. And I was like, okay, I can do that. And I love helping people. So I was like, I'll do it. And I remember coming to my first mentor program thingy to work with one of the girls. And this girl was very, very mentally ill. Like, I don't mean just like regular, I mean like delayed herself. And then she had a baby that was born with she had to have a shunt and a G tube, and just, they were giving her this false hope that she would actually be able to have her child. And I remember sitting there and I was
we lost your volume.
Are you still?
No, not now.
Are you still there?
Good. Okay, there you are.
Okay.
I'm like, no, this is too good.
Sorry. And so I'm sitting there with this girl, they're giving her this false hope. And I'm just like, inside of me, I'm crying. Like, I cannot take this. And I stayed for the time. And when it was over, I got up and I walked out of there and I cried down the whole hallway. It was like all these emotions were just hitting me. It was just so, I'm never coming back here again. And I was like, I can't do this. I cannot do this. I cannot work for these people. I can't do this. I don't think it's right that a lot of the things that happen to people, like, I deserve to have my son removed from my care because I was in active addiction. And I was not able to be a good mother because I wasn't present because I was using drugs. I left my son with his Gigi all the time. But I couldn't, like, in my heart of hearts, see people who got their kids taken away for just like stupid stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I just couldn't do it. And I was like, man, this is not the job for me. And I left and I never went back. It was too much too soon. But anyway, yeah, we got Nate back. I was 2 years sober at that point. And when I first got into my sobriety, it was really difficult for me because I got Nate and I didn't know how to be a mom sober. And I felt like I was failing all the time. And sometimes I still feel like I fail, you know. because I think back to when I was using and I had all this energy and I could do all these things. And I think, am I being enough for my son? Am I doing a good enough job? You know, and I know that's just because I'm insecure and I want to make sure that I never, ever, ever fail him again, you know, because I have so much guilt from that, you know. My son is just the most amazing little boy in the whole wide world. He's so smart. And thank God he doesn't remember ever being taken away from me. He was, like I said, just about to turn 1 when he got taken away. And so he has no recollection of it. But now he knows that I am in recovery. He knows that. He says, my mom doesn't drink beer. You know what I mean? But he knows that I'm in recovery. He knows that I help people to get sober and I do things like this with people. And so he's always with me. He always comes on my videos and says hi to everybody. He's so smart. He's 6 years old and he's doing exceptionally well, like really, really well. And my husband and I have been doing really well also. Now, let me share something with you guys. I got sober and I stayed in AA for the first 3 years I was sober. And then at the 3-year mark, I found this program called MERA, which is Medication Assisted Recovery Anonymous. And I started doing that, which it's also a 12-step program, but it's specifically for people that utilize science-based medication for the treatment of addiction, like MAT. And so when I started doing that, that helped me so much to like feel like I could talk about being on MAT more openly. You know, I had already started like talking about it on my YouTube channel and stuff, but then I started meeting people who were like me and we could like talk about recovery and I could sponsor people because I felt more comfortable being able to sponsor them because like they were going through the same thing I was going through by being
understand.
You know, I could guide them and take them through the steps and everything. And it was just awesome. I loved it. But about 3.5 years into my sobriety and my husband's sobriety, my husband started struggling and he relapsed. He relapsed a couple times at the 3-year mark, got back on track. And then this last year in March of 2020, he fell off the wagon completely. Like, I mean, just balls to the wall, going to work, taking Xanax bars and thinking nobody was the wiser, right?
Right.
Well, I'm sober and I am like heavily involved. You know what I mean? Like I'm doing recovery classes. I got my YouTube channel. I got this going on TikTok, all kinds of stuff. And so I am freaking out because I am the kind of person who wants to control everything. And so now I'm trying to manage and control his life and to where he doesn't screw anything up, to where he doesn't lose his job, to where he doesn't crash his car, so I am a nervous wreck. I am taking his car keys away, taking the bank card away, doing this, doing that. And it's just getting worse, right? It's just getting worse. So then I go out and I buy this book, Codependent No More by Melanie Beattie.
Yes, everybody on the live, you're going to be so annoyed because I tell them about that book all the time. It was written so long ago and it's timeless. If you are codependent, if you think you might be codependent, if you have a friend who's codependent, get that book. It is on my bookshelf downstairs as we speak.
I started reading this book.
I love it, by the way.
Oh, no, you're fine. I started reading this book and I started doing a meeting with my patrons and my YouTube people. And we started meeting every week and reading this together. And I started working with a lady that's a part of my YouTube channel named Anne, that she's super smart. She used to be codependent too, and she'd gotten through it. And she also had somebody in her life that she loved that was actively using drugs. And so I started to read this and I started to realize that I wasn't like trying to help my husband because I was trying to help my husband because I was afraid that he was going to fuck up my life.
Yes. And
I love my husband, but what I was trying to do wasn't coming from a good place. It was coming from a place of, I hate you. I'm resentful at you. Yep. You're getting high. I can't get high. oh, hell no. You know what I mean? And I was pissed. And so everything I was doing was wrong. Everything I was doing was enabling him to continue getting high because I was saving him from hitting rock bottom.
Right. And it's also coming from a little bit of a selfish place because, like you said, I don't want you fucking up my life. You know,
Exactly.
so I am going to micromanage everything so that, you know, I'm preserving myself.
Right.
Not necessarily,
Right.
it's not necessarily, I'm not really saving you for you. I'm saving
Right.
you for
No.
me. Yeah.
Exactly. And I was so angry with him, and I felt so betrayed by him that he would relapse because I thought, how could you do this? We went through so much to get our son back, and I felt like it was a deliberate betrayal. You know what I mean? And I was just so angry, and I wasn't seeing it's addiction. It's the disease of addiction, and I was treating my husband so badly. I would treat strangers better than I would treat him. I had people reach out to me every day. Nicole, I relapsed. I love you. Come here. Let me help you. Let's get you back on track. But when my husband came to me and said, I relapsed, I'm like, get that. I was just cussing him out, calling him names, just so angry. And that's when I realized, I was like, everything I'm doing is wrong. I've got to make a change. And so I let go and I stopped calling in for him. I stopped taking his bank card away. I stopped taking his car keys away. And about 30 days after that happened, he lost his job. And when he lost that job, because my husband had a really good job, making really good money, and it was basically the sole provider, you know. I mean, I have my job, but he was making big bucks. It was like just what he needed to realize that, because my husband, when things happen, it's like when he loses money or a job, it's more serious, you know?
Right. Right. He needs that happening in your face reality.
It was a consequence. And what I was doing was I was saving him from experiencing the negative consequences of using. So therefore, I was enabling him to continue on with his drug use, you know what I mean? By saving him from hitting the rock bottom and experiencing it. And so when that happened, I was just like, well, here we are. I called my boss, I called Dr. B, I called Austin, I called Dr. G, and I was like, this is what's going on, you know, and they were the first people to step up and say, Dr. B was like, I'll talk to Neil. Let's have a meeting with him. And I won't tell you, like, he even sat on the phone with Neil for like 2 hours and was like, I'm not going to tell Nicole anything we talk about. It's just between you and me. They offered to bring my husband into treatment for free. I mean, just like, they really helped. They offered to help me with so much stuff just to help save my husband, you know? He ended up like, it was like he lost his job and he just snapped out of it, which I am not like that. When I go out, I'm out there. I'm not coming back, you know? But it was like, bam, he snapped out of it, and he'll have 60 days on the 22nd of this month. Jesus.
Awesome. Well done. Well done, Neil.
He lost his job 3 days before Christmas. It was just like, so just like, it was bad. It was scary too, but I'm so thankful that that happened. And my dad has a really good friend who has been sober for like 30 years. And so he has my husband's phone number, and they talk, and they're going to probably work together. And he talks to other people that are in recovery. But, you know, I've had to just really back away and let him do what he wants, what works for him, because I love him. As long as he's staying sober and he's doing the right thing, I'll be around. If he decides to go and use, then he has to be away from us. He has to remove himself from this house, you know?
So, Nicole, tell us how is everything now? You're almost 6 years sober. You're working for Dr. B. Neil's at 60 days. How's life?
Oh, my life is good. My life is amazing. I feel like I feel like I got my shit together for once in my life. And for a long time, I didn't feel like that. Like overall, like I have a great job that I enjoy doing, and I'm passionate about doing, that gives me purpose. My relationship with my husband is so much better because now, like, he is not stressed. He's going to find a job that actually makes him happy, that he can find purpose doing. My son is just an overachiever, doing so good at school, happy as can be. My parents My parents moved back from New York to Arkansas after I got sober, and they are so proud of me. They call me all the time to tell me how proud they are of me, which I hadn't heard my dad and my mom tell me they were proud of me since I was like 17 years old, 16 years old.
That's fantastic.
Okay, sorry. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
I have my relationship back with my little sister, Michelle and Christine. I'm finally able to be a sister to my baby sister, and my sister, Michelle, is sober too. So everything is amazing. Like, I have strong support network. I don't just sit here and like do videos on TikTok and YouTube. Like, I have therapy, I have sponsor, I have people that I work with that help me stay sober. Like, I really focus a lot. My whole life is centered around recovery. Like, it's very important for me, because if, like, I was really bad on drugs, and if I didn't focus all my time on getting high, then I wasn't going to get high. So I figured I better focus all my time on staying sober.
Exactly. Now tell everybody where they can find you, your name on TikTok, your where they can find you on YouTube with your channel. That is awesome. Oh. I'm subscribed. You guys, Real Talk Recovery. It's Real Talk Recovery, isn't it?
It's Real Talk Recovery everywhere.
Awesome. She goes live all the time. It's really good. Make sure you subscribe, and then your Real Talk Recovery on TikTok too, are you?
TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, everywhere I'm Real Talk Recovery, Facebook. And I'm so sorry that I speak so much, y'all. I'm so long-winded. I just feel like I want to tell y'all everything that happened. You know what I mean?
Your story was powerful. It is absolutely going to help somebody. It is really going to help those mothers that are struggling, either struggling in addiction or they've recovered, they have their kids, and they're trying to make peace, with everything that happened. But thank you so much for being
You're welcome.
on here.
I really appreciate you for letting me come on here. I will be here to help anybody. Like, you guys, I always answer my messages on TikTok. Like, if you need to DM me and you have a question, or you just need some kind of advice, like, I'm not one of those people that's like, oh yeah, I'm sober, but I'm like too good to help anybody, or I'm too good to reach back out. Like, I'm so down to earth and just chill. And like, I will help anybody I can, honestly. So
yes, you are not alone. You have people you can message, and just your vulnerability and just your willingness to be vulnerable. That it was powerful. It was really powerful. So again, the honor was all mine. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you, girl.
Thank you. All right. That is going to do it for us for the recovery scene for this week. Look for, I will post a teaser on TikTok